Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. It's a scorcher in Buffalo. We had one of those days where it's 80 degrees and then it pours rain like crazy and there's lots of wind and then it's 80 degrees again. So it's like one of those typical late July. Russ, this is the time of the year that most people love. It's not the time of year I hate. It's like mid to late July to August in Buffalo. It's oppressive. It's 90 degrees. It's humid.
You only get a month and a half of it.
It sucks. Honestly, I'd rather it to be 60 all year. Give me that.
60, really? Not
Yeah.
even sports weather.
I'd sign up for 60 all year.
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
That's preposterous.
To start us off with the pre-show.
All right, so I saw that the ESPYs happened. I didn't watch any of it, but you see some of it on social media. And what's interesting is they put Shohei Ohtani as the best MLB player, which I'm good with. I think he is. But then best athlete men's sports. That's the one where it's like, I get he's pitching and I get that he's, hitting. Is there not a better athlete in all of men's sports? That's a big category. It's a big world out there.
Yeah, there is, but because he's dual purpose, that that everybody's going nuts about Ohtani. By the way, I know that someone in our DMs had sent a thing of Peyton Manning doing basically stand up. I didn't know if that was this ESPYs or if that was previous. All I know is that the reaction of Kevin Durant was not. If that was from this year, he was not happy at that. Which honestly, I love because honestly, Kevin Durant. You're requesting a trade after you forced your way to Brooklyn because you listened to a reprobate like Kyrie Irving, and you followed that jerk to Brooklyn, and now you want out because they had the audacity to only give him a 1-year deal when he didn't show up for an entire year. I mean, my God. So, but that I give Peyton Manning total props there. Is that just that was troll worthy. It was beautiful. I loved it.
So let me ask you this, just expanding on the Shohei Ohtani. So is he a better athlete than LeBron James? I mean, LeBron James is playing a lot of minutes a night. He's 35 years old. He looks like a linebacker. I don't think he's a better athlete than LeBron James.
Well, if you consider championships or getting the championships,
it's just
no. Let me look. If you consider championships or getting the championships, LeBron is 9 times the athlete because Ohtani will never get to the playoffs, let alone win a title in Major League Baseball. But yeah.
Here's another argument while you're thinking about it. So Devon Allen, who plays for the Eagles, the other day he got disqualified in the 110-meter hurdles final at the World Championships, but he made it to the final. He's a football player and a track and field guy. We don't even know him. Nobody really knows him. And already I would say that's a better athlete than Shohei Ohtani as an example. So there's definitely football players who are better athletes too.
I think Usain Bolt is a better athlete.
Yeah, but he's retired. We can't use him.
Well, but I mean, remember Ronaldo Skeets Nehemiah when he was like, he was a champion Olympic sprinter, and then he tried to be a wide receiver. And
I mean, honestly, as much as I don't like him, even Tom Brady is probably a better athlete than Shohei Ohtani playing football at the age of 45.
Well, yeah. I mean, Ohtani's what, 27?
Yeah.
And he's already hurt himself when it came to, he had Tommy John surgery, I believe, a couple years ago.
Yeah. So I'm just saying this is a weak pick for the category. For baseball, made complete sense. Didn't make complete sense for me, though, for just best athlete for anything.
Yeah, and putting the speech, and I didn't watch the speech, but I heard the acclaim regarding Dick Vitale's speech at the ESPYs. Putting that aside because Dick is battling cancer and but the ESPYs are a shit show. They've always been. It's just I've never seen more self-aggrandizing crap in my life. Oh, oh boy, yeah, it's like sort of the Academy Awards of sports, and really, the Academy Awards have gotten vapid and self-absorbed over the years. So, honestly, you want to accentuate that this is the worst time of the year in terms of professional sports. Follow up the Major League All-Star Game with a day when there's nothing going on except the ESPYs. Point.
Yeah, then it's a bad day. I agree with you on that. And I guess it's filler for ESPN, but it's a bad day otherwise.
Yeah. What was it?
Answer the chat room. What are my thoughts on best driver? If you're meaning race car driver, you're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah, no, Anthony Mangione, because Anthony does a F1 podcast, and honestly, I haven't watched any kind of road sport since I used to watch AJ Foyt at the Indy 500 back in the 70s.
I would say Jeff Gordon, and then I know Michael Schumacher's retired, and there's all kinds of questions about his health after that freak ski accident. Yeah. That's as much as my racing knowledge goes. It's not very good.
I thought Danica Patrick was pretty cute, but
it's just my racing knowledge stinks. But let's see. Northern 96. Daniel Jones is a pro football player and a pro cornhole player. You really can't be a pro cornhole player because any drunk could play that in their yard, and we've all done it and can do pretty well.
That mean
I can't say that.
Is Beavis a pro cornhole player? Because he is cornholio.
All right.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, July 21st, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. Look, if we were going all time, then I would say Mario Andretti. I would agree with you, Tony Soprano, but nobody said all time. They just said it the way they said it.
And I'm Michael Agello. Are you talking me? And this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with some signings. Just broke about an hour or so ago. One of the prominent free agents that had not been signed was Nino Niederreiter, and he leaves the Carolina Hurricanes, goes to the Nashville Predators on a 2-year deal for $4 million AAV. He had 44 points. I think it was 24 goals, 20 assists last year. Good, I'd say middle six winger, probably, second line. I'd say, tough to play against, physical. I think this is a good signing. I think the amount is good. I think the term is good. This is good work by David Poile.
Yeah, I think a day later, now Kevin Allen knows why David Poile didn't react to Matthew Tkachuk, because he already knew he had Niederreiter on the hook, and it's a lot cheaper. They're not comparable players. Don't think I'm going there. But he's a really good player. And actually, he's the kind of player that I think can go to Nashville and score, because he scores a lot of dirty goals. He is around the net a lot. He's a cheap shot artist, but teams like him. He will do well in Nashville.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of Nashville in the way that they played last year. So you add Niederreiter to Tanner Jeannot and, Jakub Trenin. And
a little more grindier.
Yeah, but you sense that, that's the direction that they're going. They're tough to play against. They're physical. And, if, now Forsberg comes back, if Johansson and Duchesne have the same type of year that they had last year, then you may have something there. I still think Nashville's sort of a step behind, Vegas and Edmonton and Minnesota and St. Louis, but they're to my mind, they're definitely a playoff team. They, probably, have a good chance of finishing in the top 3 in the Central, and maybe if not, they're one of the wild cards. But
do you believe in UC Saros? I'm still going to have this.
Yeah,
I know.
I give him a lot of credit for, he was a finalist for the Vezina.
I know.
He had a fantastic year. I'm just waiting, because
we've seen the wheels fall off of UC Saros too.
Yeah, and okay, can 31 teams be wrong when it comes to small goaltenders? We know that everybody, every team wants a 6'4" goaltender who's like a praying mantis. They want him with the long legs that can kick out to the sideboards. And UC Saros is more of a sort of, he's not a stand-up, but he's more of a hybrid type of shorter goaltender and relies on the angles. And I mean, he had a great year last year. Do I think it's for real? I don't know, but I mean, they're betting on him. But I mean, obviously, in the back of their back pocket, they have Askarov coming in a couple years. So
right, but Askarov's not here now, and UC Saros is, and it does make you wonder. I have to really look at it. I'm going to want to dig through his playoffs again because I feel like he's been okay in the playoffs, but not fantastic.
Yeah, I'm just putting this up here. Media Nashville think Poyle's still working on getting Tkachuk. I you know, if they're saying that, I think they're wrong. I mean, okay, Nashville has, let's see, what do they have in terms of cap space? They have now $4 million. Not going to happen. Okay, so they would have to trade somebody out to make room for Tkachuk, and that's assuming Tkachuk would sign there long term.
Right.
I don't know that. Now, we talked about this yesterday. It's like, will he sign anywhere other than, say, St. Louis? I can be proven wrong. I mean, we were making a case about him going to play with Brady in Ottawa. Ottawa's got a lot of cap space, but I don't know. I mean, until I see evidence of the fact, I'm skeptical. Just like
here's UC Saros in the playoffs.
Yeah.
1 year he played 2 games in 824. 1 year he played 4 games in 952. 1 year he only played 1 game, 952. 1 year he played 4 games, 895. Last year he played 6 games, 921. Now, I'm willing to say that's a career year for UC Saros last year.
Yeah.
So now, does he fall back in the middle of being like a 905 guy again? Like that would be my only worry.
Yeah. I mean,
and I'm not making it up. These are like his stats. They're not my stats.
Yeah. And I mean, you can say that the absence of Saros clearly affected Nashville's chances at in the playoffs, but they weren't beating Colorado. And I can say it's easy to say that since Colorado won the Stanley Cup. But yeah, they weren't
beating his year. Like, they're gonna have to have some really good defense in front of them.
Yes. And okay, they have Ekholm and they have Yossi and they have Fabro and they traded for McDonough. So I think, now
that might be enough. It might be.
Right. Now their defense is closer to what it used to be when they had, Weber and Suter and Yossi. I mean, because I think McDonough for the next couple years, he's a genuinely good ad.
Yeah.
And he still has games. So
yeah.
But
to answer GSM, yes, Nashville is on Tkachuk's list.
Yes.
But we don't believe they have the wherewithal to be able to get him.
Right. And yes, there are teams out there like St. Louis who would have to open up cap space or trade salary back in a deal to get Tkachuk.
I can tell you Doug Armstrong has never been afraid to trade assets or do any of what you just said. And that's why I still think, even though there are these other teams on the list, that he will be right amongst them at the very top and probably will land him. Because if he waits for him, because this is the danger. There is a danger here. If they wait for him and he decides that, you know what, I kind of like Dallas. I like what they've told me. I like what they're doing. I'll sign long-term. Then Armstrong lost his window, right? So he may have to give up these assets to get him landed on a long-term deal, or he could lose the window because another team may just, sweep him off his feet. I don't think that's going to happen, but the possibility exists.
Yes, it does. Now, like I said yesterday, I think there's still a possibility that Tkachuk could go to a team that is only interested in him for 1 year. There are some teams that have the capability, that have the willingness to put down, say, we'll sign you for 8. We'll give you $9.5, $10 million. There are definitely teams out there. I also think there are teams out there, and I wrote yesterday about Toronto. I don't know. I doubt that Kyle Dubas is in on Tkachuk. My argument was
1 year it would seem pretty risky for him, even.
But my argument is he should be. But there are other teams like the Rangers, like other competitors.
I don't see how the Rangers floated though.
Right. They'd have to clear salary in other ways, and that would be tough for them to do. But I'm just saying, like, LA possibly if they want to make a run. Could Colorado? Could
Just to give an example for Ranger fans, right? Are you willing to give up Jacob Trouba to clear the space for Matthew Tkachuk long term?
Right.
They're not giving up Trouba for a 1-year deal. I can tell you that.
And you'd have to find out from Tkachuk's representatives whether he'd be willing before you even start going down the road.
And Trouba's got a no move or no trade because of his wife being in New York, so that's another complicating matter there too.
Right. I mean, Tkachuk, his agent is Craig Oster. Okay. So any team that is saying, we want to sign him long term, you're contacting his agent and you're saying, you get permission from Calgary, and then You're saying, okay, is he open to signing a long-term deal? What would that long-term deal look like? How much would it be? And if any of those things you're not comfortable with, then you're dropping out.
Right.
Now, that's why, like, I think the possibility is there that a team accepting that would still trade for him because he's a difference maker. And if they're looking for a window of 1 year, that you'd be willing to give up significant assets. Now, obviously, a team that is looking to sign him long-term may be willing to give up more assets. But if say St. Louis is the only team that thinks that, we know he's only going to St. Louis and, we got you by the short hairs, well, Calgary could trade him someplace else and, you don't. And you never know. He could get swayed to going someplace else. You never know.
So here's an example. Because the Rangers have a little over 4, in this trade, they would have to make sure someone like Ryan Lindgren, who makes 3, or Barclay Goodrow, who's a modified no trade, who makes 3.6, is in there. Otherwise, they can't get it done.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I don't think the Rangers are doing it. That's my point.
Now, I think it was John Shannon reported that the arbitration date for Tkachuk is August 11th, and the assumption is that he will be traded before then. But that gives Calgary a few weeks to, that gives them 3 weeks to negotiate a deal. So everybody
get it done. They will.
Yeah, everybody seems to think it'll get done before that date. So we will of course watch that.
I will tell you this though, Mike. I don't know if you know this. I think the date for Jesse Puljujarvi is the 27th.
Yeah, I didn't see the date on him.
So I think it's the 27th or the 28th. So that's coming up. So we're going to see some action on him one way or the other.
Well, especially since Edmonton has a whole $68,000 cap space. So
you can't even sign me for that.
Yeah, that won't even cover Daryl Cates' legal bills. I'm not talking anything about that anymore. But yeah, so they have some issues.
29th is next Friday.
And it's not only him; it's Puljujarvi and Yamamoto.
Yeah, but Yamamoto's August 7th, so they have some breathing room on him.
Right.
But Puljujarvi, they're going to have to make a decision on next week. And if you're asking me what is going to happen with that one, I think they're going to trade him before he goes to arbitration. Because the problem is, if he goes to arbitration and they can't afford the number, then he walks and they have gotten nothing for him.
And he's 1 year away from UFA.
Right. So they can't really afford to have that happen. And they can't afford a high arbitration either, right? They just can't.
No. So
what do you think is going to happen with him?
Yeah, I was going to say, could you see a Puljujarvi for Capo Caco deal?
I think there's always a possibility of that. The Rangers could probably float that with what they have left on the cap. It may require moving one more guy out. Guy out, but I do think that's possible. I'll also give you another team. I still think Puljujarvi to Carolina, I was going to say it before Tony did, because he played with Aho, is still a logical place.
Yeah, I know. I think that, and like somebody else said, they collect Finns.
Yeah.
So, So okay, that was one. Niederreiter was one signing. The other signing was Kasperi Kapanen. Now he signed a 2-year deal at the same salary that he was making on his previous 3-year deal that he signed with Toronto, which is $3.2 million. Honestly, I think it's a good deal for Kapanen because he only had 32 points. He had 11 goals, 21 assists last year. That's not a great year, especially for somebody I think they expect.
What are you expecting of him? Let me ask you that question first, because I'm not expecting much more out of him.
Well, I mean, okay. Based on he got that contract after scoring 20 goals with the Leafs. Okay.
Because he had a lot of opportunity. Got it.
He was playing at times with Matthews.
Right. The opportunity got him those 20 goals.
Right. Exactly.
That didn't make him a 20-goal scorer.
No, but I see, that's what they paid him based on. They thought he was going to make. So okay, since then he scored 13 goals with he scored 13 goals with the Leafs, then 11 in 40 games with Pittsburgh, and then 11 in 79 games with Pittsburgh. So by them paying him the same amount, they're probably thinking that he's closer to the 20 goals than the 11 goals.
Yeah, but here's but he is not going to get the same opportunity in Pittsburgh. He's not going to play with Crosby. He's probably not going to play with Malkin either.
It's a bad signing then.
Well, it's not a bad signing. He's still a guy who has really good speed that'll get you 11 to 15 goals. I think that's realistic.
But you don't pay that guy $3.2 million.
Between 30 and 40 points, you kind of do. Yes, you do. Niederreiter's 44 points. He's tough, so he gets $4 million. This scored 3.2. So
twice as many goals. He scored 24 goals.
Yeah, I get it. But the points are what matter here. There's only so many goals to go around in Pittsburgh. So I think he'll increase his point total. But I just think your expectations of Kapanen go back to the Toronto days, and I don't think
No. My expectations are based on what they're paying him. And what they're paying him is
you can never go by that.
But okay, they're not buying unrestricted years. He's walking right to free. He's walking right to free agency. He had 2 years left under arb rights, so they're not buying anything unrestricted. So this is bottom dollar, and they still paid him $3.2 million. That tells me that they expect him to score more goals. Now, if they're wrong, then this is a bad signing in terms of money.
Well, I mean, just as an example, I don't think they're expecting many more goals because in the playoffs, he's only had 1 goal ever for them.
Right.
But he has 5 points in 13 games. He's averaging the last 2 years around 16 minutes on average for the last 2 years in the playoffs. He's just an extra scorer, Mike. That's all he is.
Well, okay. If that's what he is.
That's what he is.
Then that's a bad signing.
Yeah, I'm not going to call it a bad signing. I think
in terms of money,
yeah. No, I get it.
He's not a bad player. It's a bad amount.
He is never going to score as much as you think, not meaning you, as we all think he is going to score when we see him in games, because a lot of times in games he gets these amazing chances and he just doesn't bury them. I think that's just going to be the story of his career.
Oh, he's the Finnish Michael Grabner. I mean, breakaways, and he's got unbelievable speed and not a lot of finish.
Yeah.
Sorry for the pun. Okay, so Pittsburgh. We wanted to touch on Pittsburgh because now they've signed Kapanen. They brought back Casey DeSmith. They brought back Malkin. They brought back Letang. The only thing that they've really done in terms of switching things up is they've shuffled the defense, bringing in Jeff Petrie, bringing in Ty Smith, moving out John Marino, and moving out Michael Matheson. I don't know if we can expect much in terms of a different result. They've actually gotten older, which I didn't think was possible.
Well, on paper, but Ty Smith is younger.
Yes. and Ryan Poehling is young.
Yep.
But they brought in a 34-year-old Petrie. They re-signed all their 35-year-olds. I mean, they're not a spring chicken.
No, but I think Poehling will do more for them than who was the big centerman that they had gotten from Minnesota who never really did much, always was hurt.
Oh, and Nick Bjugstad.
Yeah, he'll do more for them than Bjugstad, I think.
Yeah.
If he's healthy. Of course, you always have to say that with Poehling. I was listening to Phil Bork on Sirius today, and Phil Bork pointed out two things. That Todd Reardon is kind of like a defenseman whisperer, and he is. He turned Cody Ceci into something decent in Pittsburgh.
And now he's turned back into a pumpkin in Edmonton.
Right. And Mike Matheson, last year was Mike Matheson's best year that we've ever seen him defensively. We all have to agree on that. And he got that out of him. So to think he's going to turn around Ty Smith, who's already a young guy with promise, isn't that hard of an ask. So I think they're going to be able to do that. And then the other thing is Phil Bork said that he believes Crosby went to management and got Malkin that fourth year. And I think he probably did because, Hextall definitely was hedging on that. And I think in the end, they decided to go in that direction because, let's face it, it's easier to go in that direction than to go in the direction of deciding we don't want Crosby and we don't want Malkin and Letang here, and Crosby's upset, and now we're rebuilding with Crosby because we're going to lose him too. And you lose those three, you're right back to where you were 7-8 years ago or 10 years ago before, really it's more than 10 now, before all the winning, right? So it's not a hard decision.
Yeah, they stood pat is what they did. They didn't risk walking away from Letang and him going someplace else and being good, and walking away from Malkin and him having like a renaissance someplace else. They kept the guy. They kept the guys who had been there all this time, and now they have no move clauses. They basically will only leave if they want to leave. But I mean, who's to say that a year or two down the road, that the age is catching up with them, and
it definitely could happen.
This team starts to decompensate, and then.
But for this year, I don't see that happening.
No, they're still going to be competitive. I don't know whether they can win, whether they can make a deep run with Tristan Jarri in goal because I haven't seen it. I mean,
but like GSM pointed out, like because of what was happening in net, and they were playing the Rangers. Yeah, that was a tough series for them.
Yeah, they might have won with Jarri if Louis Domingue had not been forced to play all those games. So yeah, it's an unknown. Okay, some notes here. There's an unconfirmed report.
Hold on. I want to just say this. Michael Cohen's like, but the Pens always get buttered up despite it being 5 years next spring since they last won a playoff round, because they still are competitive, Michael Cohen. Last year, the Penguins, nobody was saying they were any good except I did because I went to their practice and I saw that they were going to be pretty good. It's hard not to butter them up if I'm seeing in front of my eyes a different kind of work ethic that I hadn't seen out of that team in 3 or 4 years. So it's not buttering up. It's just saying it like it is. Sorry.
5 years would be a siesta for Toronto when it comes to the playoff. There are unconfirmed reports right now, so we haven't heard it definitively, but there are unconfirmed reports that Zdeno Chara will announce his retirement. That can't be a surprise because, we thought that might happen last year before he went to the Islanders. And, there was sort of a symmetry there. He started his career with the Islanders and he ends his career with the Islanders, but there was thought maybe he'd go back to Boston or whatever. But, I mean, if it is announced, I mean, obviously a Hall of Fame career. I mean, I don't think I'm going out on a limb there.
No.
But clearly last year we saw him in a diminished capacity. I mean, he simply, in the last 3 or 4 years, his speed or lack thereof was a factor. And last year it was sort of like pylon territory, but he still had that long reach that he could shut people down at times. But that if that does happen, it's not a shock.
No, it's not a shock. I mean, it's a great career. Listen, I mean, I know people that watched him in the AHL and they said he was a hot mess. He was a big guy who couldn't skate. He would even admit that. And it all came together for him, and he became one of the better all-around defensemen that we've seen in the last 20 years. Like, just a dominating kind of guy, great personality, great for the Boston market. They loved him there. They liked him in Ottawa, too. I mean, I don't think fans wanted him to go in Ottawa, right? There's no way. I mean, the only one who wanted to see him go was Mike Milbury.
Yeah.
It's just too easy, folks. I'm sorry. It's right there.
Low-hanging fruit. And then, Ottawa made the great decision of choosing Wade Redden over him.
Well, I mean,
at that point, Wade Redden was a good player.
At the point, Wade Redden was better. But in the end, you would have thought the Rangers would have learned that before they signed Wade Redden. But that's a whole other show, folks.
Okay, Russ, I want you to interpret and explain the following statement by the new head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers, John Tortorella.
Okay.
This is according to an article on NBC Sports Philadelphia. Tony DeAngelo is a hell of a player. Tony DeAngelo has personality. Is he going to say and do some stupid stuff? You're damn right he is. But I'd rather have a guy doing stupid stuff than having a choir boy here just going about your business. You don't win that way. That is completely detached from reality.
So this is what Torts is doing. He's getting ahead of it.
Yes.
He's basically saying, listen, I know Tony. I know he's going to do these things. I don't care. He cares. He just doesn't care to tell you that he cares. Trust me. He is not going to want his guys to be overly vocal in the media. He doesn't like that. He doesn't want them to be overly fancy. We saw that with Trevor Zegras. So this is just Torts trying to get ahead of it because he already saw that DeAngelo was in the media doing an interview, trying to blame Jeff Gordon for his own, misgivings in the game. And this is Torts seeing that. When was this article posted, Mike?
I think it was today or yesterday.
Yeah. So don't you think that it's kind of interesting that this quote comes out like a couple of days after DeAngelo was on
yes.
Whose show was it? Cam Jansen and
Andy Strickland.
Don't you think that's kind of odd, Mike?
Yeah, no, I think it's damage.
It is
damage control is what it is. Yeah, and to use a Jeff Merrickism, I guess it's easier to paint stripes or to tame a tiger than to paint stripes on a kitty cat, and that's what Tortorella's saying. But honestly, I don't think the analogy is correct here because DeAngelo is a tiger that's eaten flesh. If you ever see the movie The Ghost in the Darkness, it was lions instead of tigers. But once they've tasted human flesh and they have to kill them because they have a taste for them, he's uncontrollable. He's proved that he's uncontrollable in Tampa, in Arizona, in New York, and in Carolina.
He hasn't won anything yet or even gotten far in the playoffs. But I do want to point this out to the Animal Cracker. He's saying, funny how DeAngelo isn't allowed to talk politics, but all other players are if they're on the right side of things. I mean, that's wrong because other players still talk about politics. The problem was he started a podcast to do it and didn't come off looking very intelligent. And so, of course, I don't think the New York Rangers liked it at the time. And if you notice, the podcast went away. Yeah. That's the reason. It's not because he was talking about the other side. If he isn't telling off people on Twitter and he's just posting his own posts about politics and not involving himself with people on Twitter, they'd probably be okay with that.
Okay. This is the thing. You don't talk right-wing Trump politics when you're playing for a team in the People's Republic of New York.
That's not a great idea.
It's stupid. And Philadelphia is just as liberal city as New York is. Now, in Carolina...
This whole thing about what Torts came out and did had nothing to do with politics anyhow. This just had to do with him talking about the buyout that he offered to do for New York magnanimously, according to Tony. And, I don't believe any of it. So,
it's just, in Carolina, he could get away with that stuff because Carolina is more, I'd say, right of center.
Yeah.
But you didn't hear him talk about it because maybe he knew that, he was told, just shut up. And in Philadelphia, he should be told, just shut up. Don't talk about politics. But if he starts his own podcast.
This is a way for the Flyers to not tell Tony to shut up. And instead, they get a quote out of the coach, and the coach sort of takes care of it for now. He's going to have to do that probably 2 or 3 more times this year. That's just the reality.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. Anyway, we're going to cut the show short today, but I wanted to touch on this because I'm going to write about it. In the wake of all the Tkachuk talk, obviously, other teams, especially Canadian-based teams, are looking at their own situations and wondering, is that what we're gonna have to deal with down the line? And of course, that's utmost in the minds in Toronto because Austin Matthews has 2 years left in his contract, and I mentioned it yesterday. They can sign him to an extension on July 1st of next year. And Kyle Dubas, or, if he is dismissed and somebody else is the general manager, the first thing on his agenda, even before next July 1st, is to contact Judd Moldaver, who is Matthews' agent, and say, what do you want? And now here's the difference. Tkachuk, at least I think perception is reality here, Russ. He couldn't wait to get out of Calgary. He served his time. And Calgary fans, I'm not Flamester. I'm not just saying, I'm not trying to attack Calgary, but I'm just saying from his perspective, he played through his entry level. He's played 3 of the 4 years. And he can be eligible for unrestricted free agency after 7 years. He's served 6 of the 7. Now he's trying to force his way out of there. Matthews, from all the reports, and Frank Sorelli reported it yesterday, and I've heard this beforehand. Elliot Friedman reported it, and it's been widely. He loves Toronto. He loves playing there. He's, it's a hockey mad city. He's making the second most money in the league. He arguably could be, because McDavid's contract is another year after that, he probably becomes the highest paid player in the NHL. And it's a team that, even though they haven't had playoff success, has been a contender, has been a legitimate contender for most of the time that he's been there. So, and things can change, Russ, but I could see why Matthews would stay in Toronto. But I don't think fans in Toronto will feel comfortable until the ink is dry on the contract extension.
I get that. But so there's 2 things I'll say about this. The first one is, just because Matthews has played for this long in Toronto, it's not like he could go and retire in a market like Arizona and no one's going to pay attention to him again. He's too good a player. You saw what happened in, when he was out of season and things got reported, even that was in Arizona, right? So it's not like he can get away from the media anymore. It's too late for that. Everyone knows who he is.
Patrick Kane in the offseason comes back to Buffalo and gets in trouble in Buffalo.
Right.
It doesn't matter where,
No, so the media will find him because he's too good a player. Right. And I think he likes the attention. So I don't think he's going anywhere.
Yeah. And remember, some of his off-ice pursuits, he's into fashion. I think he's starting his own clothing line, things of that nature. Yeah. He can sell that in New York.
He can talk to Evander Kane about that now.
Yeah, no, he's not putting out jogging suits. He can sell that in Toronto. He can't sell that in Scottsdale.
Right.
So,
right.
Okay.
Sell it to retirees in Scottsdale, but
yeah. Andrew says LA, or somebody who said LA. Yeah, no.
I don't think he has the LA personality. Just because he is sort of an outgoing, enjoys the media guy in Toronto, that's still different than LA kind of media. I mean, again, best thing I could tell you is when that team was winning a Stanley Cup, I think it was Mike Richards walked into like an LA studio because he's supposed to do an interview with like a big time shock jock, and he had no idea who he was. Now, Austin Matthews, he would have a little better of an idea, but like Mike Richards was already a pretty big star in the NHL, and in LA, that doesn't mean much.
Yeah, and I just have to, because I know the media relations people in Toronto. They handle things very well. Matthews is not overburdened with, he'll talk after games, but not after every game. He'll talk after morning skates, but not all the time. He's not overburdened. He's not like, it's not like he can't get a moment's peace and quiet in Toronto. From everything that I've heard, they're allowed to have social lives, since it's a big city with a lot of things to do. The one thing that I think probably was at the forefront with Tkachuk and might have been with Matthews had it been his contract expiring at this summer or next summer, is what players in Canada had to do with the pandemic. And
here's an interesting thing. So like GSM says, living in LA is better than living in Toronto. I would rather live in Toronto.
No, it's not.
I am not a West Coast guy. I've been out on the West Coast.
Tell me about the traffic in LA.
There's more things that I would like about Toronto, aside from the freezing cold winter, than I would like about LA. But look, someone brought up Anaheim. I'm sure Trevor Zegras is somebody Matthews would love to play with. And if they got one or two more Americans and something went wrong with the Leafs, like bad negotiations or whatever, would he look at a team like Anaheim? Yeah, he might.
Yeah, but, I mean, Matthews, there are obviously Goudreau had friends on the Flames, and friends aren't prevent you from going someplace else. But the combination of, honestly, Matthews could end up being the greatest player in Maple Leaf history if he signs an extension, stays there, and has Mitch Marner setting him up. He'll definitely break Matt Sundin's career record for points and goals if he stays there. And maybe, who knows if that clicks any things for him.
Well, here's what clicked in my head. So there's two things, and I'm going to bring up one small subject after this. But if he's in the last year or 2 years of his deal, Mike, and the team stinks, and they're asking him to leave the market, and he doesn't, are you giving him the same treatment you gave Matt Sundin?
Wait, say that again.
What if the same circumstances happened to him at the end of his career that happened with Matt Sundin, and he did the exact same thing? Would you give him the same treatment that you give Matt Sundin?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
That's But I don't think Austin Matthews is as selfish as Matt Sundin was.
Well, we'll see. That's a few years from now. I wanted to bring up, I thought the signing of Gabriel Carlson by the Capitals was really good, because I think he could be a number 6 in this league. He's 6'4". His skating's pretty good. I just don't think he's ever gotten a full chance with anybody. And right now, Washington does need a little toughness on the blue line and a little size. I give him a better, than average chance of making the team and not just being a 7. So that's one thing. I don't know if you have any feeling about that, Mike.
Not really.
Okay. And then the other one is I want to talk about, the Bruins re-signed Jack Ashan, who this was a guy that was on the World Junior team who I felt was really undersized at the time, kind of got bounced around in the tournament. And I was like, I don't know if he's ever going to be like even NHL depth material. And I have to say, last year he was a half a point a game in the AHL. He played 6 games with Boston, but he's 5'8". Is he 5'8"? 5'9". 5'9", 180. And so what comes to mind with this is Lane Hutson, who happens to be 5'8", like 160 right now. Lane Hutson has a lot more ability than Jack Ashan, and Ashan is sort of treading on, being a fill-in NHLer once in a while. So on the model that Jack Ashan is on, this is why I give Lane Hutson a better than 50% chance of making it to the NHL, because of all those other things he brings to the table. There's still a 40-something% chance he's not making it, but his offense is way better than Ashan, and Ashan has figured out a way to at least be on the cusp of it, where I think Hutson in a few years will gain some of this weight, little muscle, all that. Maybe he'll grow like the growth, plate thing report says. But either way, this kind of player is his path. Like, well, I think they can improve on that.
It does help that the Bruins have some bigger defensemen like Brandon Carlo. So it's sort of like Chara with Krug. If you have a smallish type of defenseman, if you have a bigger defenseman sort of overcompensate, that sort of evens things out. So maybe he can play as a 6 on that team if he's paired with Carlo, or that would help. But I mean, Lane Hutson's going to make it on his own devices. He's going to make it on his talent.
Even if he makes it as a bottom pair, he'll lead a power play. Like, that's what he's born to do.
Now, just to finish off with this, the World Juniors, I believe I heard it was August 9th.
Yeah.
The question that is interesting is how many of the players who played in Edmonton in December will return. I know, for example, for the Leafs, Matthew Nyes, who played for Team USA at the World Junior, at the Olympics, is going back to the World Junior before he goes back to Minnesota for his sophomore year. There are players that I was at Sabres development camp last week, Isaac Rosen and another player who are both going to be playing for their respective clubs. So, but the question, I don't think you're going to see, Slavkovsky's not going to go back.
No, I don't think he'll go back.
Or Shane Wright's not going to go.
I don't think Shane Wright's going to be there.
I would assume Connor Bedard is going to go back for Canada.
No, Bedard will be there.
Yeah, but and the player, if I'm wrong, the players who have subsequently turned 20 could still go back.
Yeah, they're grandfathered in because they lost their age chance, however you want to put that. But here's what I would say. So, like, I was asked on the Flyer show I do about Cutter Gauthier, and on the Locked On Flyers podcast. And Cutter Gauthier, I think if he were to go back into the World Juniors and play center, it would make sense. If he's going back as a winger, I don't think it makes sense for him, because he could use this extra time to sort of get ready for the BC season to play center. Like, that's what he's trying to do. So I think that may be the dividing line for someone like Cutter Gauthier is, can they use him as a center? If they do, then maybe he does go back. But I think someone like Brad Lambert will absolutely go back, because he was going to dominate. And I think if he gets a chance to dominate, that might change the opinions of some people out there of what Brad Lambert can and cannot do. So I think a guy like Brad Lambert's going to go. I think for everyone that you say like Slavkovsky that's not going to go, there'll be 2 others that go.
Right.
So I think it'll still be a pretty good tournament. Will it be as talent-laden as it was when the other one started? No, because guys like, who was it, Cole Perfetti was on that roster, right? Probably isn't going to be, because it's close enough to Jets camp where they may not mess with that.
Well, where this tournament bears watching for people like, Russ is obviously
I'll be watching
into prospects, and I as well, but not as much as he is. For the 2023 draft, players that will be replacing players who either aged out or decided not to go back are going to be those top prospects for the 2023 draft. So you're going to see, say, I know Bedard made it, but if Bedard had not made it, that this would be the first opportunity for a Bedard,
right,
or a Mishkov or Fantilli, or any of these players who are going to be who speculated to be at the top of the 2023 draft. This will be a first look on top of when they play in the 2023 World Junior. I don't even know where it is next. Oh, is it? It's not in Halifax, is it?
I think it's Halifax.
Okay. So for the 2023 World Junior in December. So the teams are going to get a double look at these guys. Some of these guys, because of the odd situation here. So,
I think someone asked, can this get somebody a longer look with an NHL roster by playing well in these World Juniors, because it kind of runs into it? I mean, it would have to be an exceptional circumstance. I don't think that's necessarily a strategy that's going to be employed. I don't.
No, and Kyle Dubas said this, and I actually agree with it. First of all, he said, I'm not going to deny the opportunity for somebody to play for their country.
Right.
But he also said it's an awful lot to ask for these kids that they go, they go from the draft, they go to a development camp, then they go to the World Junior, then they go to training camp.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. I mean, there's no break there. So more than likely the kids that are going, the reason Slafkovsky is not going is because he's going to go to training camp with the Canadians and try to make the team.
He's turning pro in one way or the other.
Right. Whereas Matthew Nyes is going to the World Junior. He's not going to leave training camp because he's not signed. He's going back to
college starts later.
And college starts later, so he gets a chance to, basically catch up.
We'll see a lot of college players for that reason.
Right.
But again, like I said with Gauthier, I just don't know if it makes sense for him to go and play as a winger. That's all.
But Logan Cooley, something like that, will go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Cooley will go.
So, all right. We'll be back. We'll potentially be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast.
Never know. It's the summer, folks.
Yeah. It's tough. We have lots of things. I'll be up in Toronto at the last day of their development camp. So at the wonky Wi-Fi and phone situation.
Mike's still trying to develop, but
yeah. So
it's slow. It's a slow process.
Yes, it is. All right. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.